Thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Chris Vlasic. I'm the Director of Safety and Personnel Services here for the Los Alamitos Unified School District. On behalf of the Board of Education, typically we do have a board member at these types of events. Unfortunately, they are all at a School Board Association conference that's up in Northern California. It's a yearly event, and they are all up there right now with our superintendent. So on behalf of our board and our superintendent, we're just very thankful and appreciative of you being here tonight. We have a great team assembled for you to not only present, but to be here as a resource to ask some questions. I am assuming that not everybody that's here has students that are just at the high school level. You might have students that are elementary, middle, or high school. So we have a team here that can answer questions at pretty much every level. So hopefully we will be able to provide you information that will maybe fill in some gaps that you have, answer some questions that you have. But if we don't, that's why we will have a question and answer session after. We also will be recording this particular presentation and posting it in our YouTube channel and our website so you can access it later or send it off to other families that weren't able to attend tonight. So really quickly, I'd like to introduce our team briefly. First and foremost, like I said, we have a fantastic team that's assembled that works really closely together. We are a close-knit group. There isn't a day that doesn't go by that we don't really conference with one another, consult with one another, even if it doesn't necessarily involve our particular area, just to make sure we're collaborating and making sure we're in the right direction. So I'm really, really pleased to introduce Dr. Heidi Olshan. She's our Director of Special Education and Mental Health. Heidi has been, a counselor here at the high school. She's been an assistant principal here at the high school for student support services. And again, now she's in this position as a Director of Special Education and Mental Health. Grace Delk is a Coordinator of Special Education and Mental Health. And Grace served as a school psychologist here, not only at the elementary level, but at the high school level as well. Dan Bennett is our illustrious Coordinator of Education and Technology. And so Dan is actually an alumnus of Los Alamitos High School and a former science teacher and is doing a fantastic job in his current role as Coordinator of Ed Tech. Dan will forget more technology than I will ever know. He's a fantastic resource for us and really bails us out on a daily basis. And then myself, as I've already introduced, and we also have some other team members here. I'd also be remiss if I didn't introduce a couple of administrators that are here from the high school. Mr. Phil Bowen, Assistant Principal, in the back. Mr. Jason Farber, another Assistant Principal here at the high school. And then I'm going to let Heidi and or Grace introduce some of our support team that's here.
Okay, so our mental health counselors are here. Why don't you stand? We've got Stacy Eatman, Christina Park, two of our three mental health counselors for the district. And our school sites, why don't you stand up? We have Heather Carpenter, Christine Morris, and Anne-Marie Bergeron. And then finally, we have Tina Heron, who is our counselor here at the high school. So,
just for the record, Tina doesn't handle all 3,200 students here at the high school. She's one of a team, so she's fantastic, but that's quite a large caseload. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So with school safety being ever present on everybody's mind, especially if you have a child that is of school age, our board has not only emphasized this area, they've made it a board priority goal. That's one of 5 goals that governs our district and basically is kind of our North Star, if you will, as we continue to make progress in all of these areas. The first one is passionately pursuing academic excellence. The second one is ensuring a healthy, safe, and secure drug-free environment for all of our students. This past year, we added the term secure in that particular board priority goal. And that goal emphasizes essentially physical safety, which would mean facility improvements, campus supervision, things of that nature. Mental health, we'll get, and Heidi and Grace will get to that portion of the presentation. Law enforcement relationships is really big for us, and we've been placing an extra emphasis on law enforcement relationships. We have a school resource officer program, threat assessment, and threat assessment mitigation, and also our safety committee, our district safety committee that meets 3 times per year. We're actually meeting next week. Those are the 4 main components of that particular board priority goal, and this particular presentation will start to hit on all of those particular elements. So If I can, first and foremost, we have tried to improve the security of our particular school sites within the last couple of years with fencing. Elementary, middle school have all had added perimeter fencing, and they've also added what we call our camera buzzer system. So when you go to the school site, there is a central point of entrance, and you are to kind of press that button. Your image comes up on the screen of the front office, and then you're let in at that particular point. So we are actually looking at modifying or adding additional fencing throughout the school district. Places at the elementary school where we're going to modify or add fencing and continue to secure our campuses. We really want to find that balance of allowing families to volunteer, be on campus, and be in the classrooms, because that's a fantastic environment for our students and for our district. At the same time, we want to make sure that we're not just letting anybody on campus. The high school is we're looking at fencing the front. However, I'm sure most of you know, with the current bond that was up for approval, that was going to dictate whether or not we were going to have a multi-story building in the front of the school. So we wanted to make sure that, wanted to kind of see where that landed. So now that we most likely see that the bond has passed, we're gonna go ahead and start looking at how we can secure the front of the campus in a really smart way if construction begins, and how that looks is still yet to be determined. But there is an interest and a priority to secure the front of this campus. Pretty much every other school in our district is securely fenced in or has perimeter fencing. We have e-badge access, so on some of our badges, on the back of them, we are able to get into school sites with an electronic badge system. So if we have school employees that come in after the beginning of the school day, they can badge in, and we're starting to look at that as also another way to increase access to our campuses for our staff. Yes?
Just going back, when is the high school going to be made fencing?
That's going to really be determined by the construction project, but I can tell you we're going to have temporary fencing that will tie into the construction of, so within the next, I don't even know what the timetable is, but as soon as possible, hopefully within the year.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Our campus supervision has also been increased across the district. We have 6 elementary campus supervisors. Those were added second semester last year, and those supervisors serve as another set of eyes and ears to observe and report when the students are in their enrichment classes, in Kids Corner, or in the CBC program after school. So they are on campus from about 2:30 to 6:15, monitoring the campus and making sure that the students are secured during those after-school hours. We have 4 middle school campus supervisors and 8 high school campus supervisors that are here before, during, and after school. There's a lot more student movement and a lot more higher numbers of students at the secondary sites. And then we have 3 track complex supervisors that are here at the high school after school hours and on the weekends. Their main duties are really to observe and report, make sure that all of the perimeter facilities are locked and opened at the correct times, that they're managing our visitors and making sure that they're making them feel welcome, but also identifying anybody that shouldn't be on campus. And then meeting with me 3 times per year as we kind of calibrate our practice and make sure that we're addressing any issues that are coming up on a yearly basis. We have a visitor management system. This is actually something that I'm going to be taking a closer look at, most likely at the end of this school year, and investigating maybe a more robust system. But essentially, when you come to our schools, you show your driver's license, you slide it through the reader, it goes through our system, and you get printed out a badge. Now, the one thing that this doesn't do is it doesn't coincide with like a Megan's Law or another database that would flag somebody who shouldn't be on a campus with youth. So that is something that I'm going to be looking into a little bit more closely as we get into the future, because this is probably about a 7 or 8-year-old system, and it's something that, like I said, I would like to improve going forward. Our surveillance cameras are here at the high school. We're actually installing surveillance cameras also at McGaw Elementary. Those should be online hopefully by January. But the surveillance cameras really serve as a deterrent, and they also allow us to go back and see if an incident did in fact occur. They're not monitored 24/7, so we don't have somebody watching a screen 24/7. They are securely maintained. They are housed at the district office in terms of all of the data, because it is secure information. So it's not like, there's a system that's purchased at Costco and we just install it. It's done in a very robust way, and our IT team is heavily involved with that installation process. So that's just a screenshot of what I can see on my computer once I log into our system. And that's just 4 camera views here on campus. I think there's up to 15 or 16 cameras on this campus, and we'll probably add more as we go forward. McGaw's campus, just to give you an idea, that's a little bit more of a robust system. I think there's over 30 cameras at that particular school site ready to be online. And I can see us adding a school probably once a year or maybe 2 schools per year, depending. Video camera systems are not cheap, and they do take quite a bit of investment in terms of just getting them up and running and installed. So that is something that we're really moving towards as we go forward, improving our security systems. This blue light tower, I know it's a blur, that's going to be a video here in a second, but the blue light tower essentially is here on this campus on the east side right in front of the gym. It's an emergency tower. The video kind of tells the story. I'll talk about it a little bit further, but I'll let the video run here. So as I stated, we're piloting this particular model. The company that we partnered with is allowing us to use the tower essentially at no cost for the entire year. We just have to pay for the installation. And so if there is somebody in distress, it's basically one touch button. They get 911 and they can report the situation. There is a blue light beacon that would serve as an indicator for any first responders, and it does take pictures of that area on a like 5 to 6 second basis. And so we're just monitoring this. You'll see a lot of these at college campuses or in parking garages that if you go to like the Irvine Spectrum or what have you. The one thing that I'm looking at though closely is usually like at a Cypress College, they might have their own police department with their own dispatch, and they have a kind of more of an internal system. Obviously, we don't have our own police department, so it is a little bit of there are some limitations in that way. So we're seeing if this is going to be an appropriate thing, not only for this school site, but for our district. So I could see, if this is something that is appropriate, we could look at one of these at each of our school sites, and maybe even have multiple here on this campus. Yes, ma'am.
So is the protocol that goes to the Los Al Police Department, and then do they send an officer out right away and contact the school, or?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So that was on point on my question too, and you kind of alluded to it as well, but on the campuses, they all go to either campus security or something first. Most of the campuses have that ability. So then I could see after hours or something, a good calling direct to the Los Al PD.
Yes.
But during campus hours, is it foreseen in the future to maybe dial to, again, maybe the front office or something, or?
No, this pretty much is only a one-touch button, and it has one number it will dial, which is 911. So it's essentially for emergency purposes only, for 911 type emergencies. Other quick safety measures, we have lock blocks on our doors. A lock block essentially is a small rubber adhesive that sticks in the door jamb, and so it allows your door to be locked while you're doing your instruction as a teacher. And if a student needed to leave to use the restroom or what have you, they don't have to unlock the door. A lot of our doors unlock from the outside. So they could slide the lock block in the door jamb, go use the restroom, and then come back in, slide the lock block, and the door would shut and lock behind them. So one of our #1 priorities is to have our doors shut and locked during instruction. That's the #1 way you probably secure your home while you're having dinner, is you have your door shut and locked. And so that's our priority here as well. I wish I could say it was 100%, across the district. When we do our instructional walks, we do have to sometimes gently remind teachers to have their doors shut during the day, just because there might be a nice breeze out. It's beautiful, it's 80 degrees, but we still want our doors locked during instruction. We have shatterproof window film on our windows. So what that does is it prevents anybody trying to access into the classrooms via the window. It's not bulletproof, but it is shatterproof. So they do have to work at it quite a bit. That's an indication of what it would look like. We've had some vandalism in the past where the window has held together, and it looked like that person had to be really dedicated to get through that particular window. It's also great for earthquakes. So earthquake, if there's a strong enough earthquake, it could shatter the window. Then we won't have any secondary injuries with glass on the ground. It would hold back that glass in place. And so that's been in place for probably the last 6 years across our district. And then we have our badges. I just kind of indulged myself with my own badge up there. But just to give you an idea of what the badge looks like, all of our, and that's a district badge, but each school site should have either a school site badge or a badge that looks very similar to that with their name, their picture, and the school site that they work at. And we ask our staff to wear those on a daily basis. Substance abuse prevention. This is a big topic for us, and really we can't ever do enough in this area. Really, the major thing that is showing up more than ever is vaping, right? And we had a parent education night on that about 2-3 months ago. And vaping is kind of the gateway to the gateway, if you will. And it's something that our kids have this low perception of harm. They don't believe it's going to harm them in any way, and yet it kind of leads them down the path of the next thing, which potentially could be marijuana or what have you. And now with marijuana most likely being legal, there's not a lot that even police officers can do in terms of possession of marijuana. If they're underage, yes, but marijuana is just more accessible now. So obviously with those factors, we have a bigger challenge here in our schools. And so we really do try to do as much as we can through what we would consider our alternative to suspension. So if a student is caught with possession or under the influence of, we do have interventions to provide for the students and the families and give them some support, not just punitive consequences of a suspension. That doesn't necessarily take care of the problem. So we try to use both consequences and some education and intervention to assist. But some of the other measures that we try to institute to prevent any substance use is a random drug testing program. We have a canine drug detection program that comes through once a month at our secondary school sites. Parent education nights like this. We have student assemblies. We're going to have a vaping assembly here at the high school at the beginning of the year. We have an every 15 minutes program, our Red Ribbon Week. And one of the other things I'm really excited about is we've recently, the last 2 years or so, partnered with the DEA and LoSal PD with a prescription drug take-back event. And I have a short little video that highlights that.
Have a great weekend.
Particular day that's illustrated on that video, we took back about 21 boxes of prescription medications, unwanted medications. It could be over-the-counter stuff, it could be supplements and vitamins, things of that nature. But the idea is we just don't want that in the community if it's not being used or it's past its due date or what have you. Unfortunately, doctors do overprescribe these days, and a lot of the prescription medications wind up in the wrong hands. So our effort in trying to mitigate and prevent all of that is to have these drug take-back events. So when you see these events come around, we just ask you to kind of spread the word. We try to post it on social media and get that word out. And like I said, it's just, somebody asked, well, what happens with all those pills at the end of the day? And so I don't like to make light of it, but it's just not 3 guys out there on a Saturday morning collecting pills. The other gentleman out there was from the DEA. He literally takes all 21 boxes to an incinerator, to a facility, and they properly dispose of it all. So, and you have to have LoSal PD there as obvious protection, because if the word is out that pills are being collected, you could have a potential issue. So. Our violence prevention is again another high priority. We have a threat assessment protocol, and there's 2 parts to it. Anything that has to do with threat to others or a threat to campus really falls in my purview. Anything that's threat to self, so self-harm or anything with suicidal ideation, that really falls with Grace and Heidi. They really tackle that together. But a lot of times, like I said, we are working in conjunction in those situations if it is a very serious situation. So we do have threat assessment teams. Many of the people that were introduced earlier have served on a threat assessment team for a student if they are in one of those two situations. We have a violent intruder protocol. One of the handouts, if you don't mind if I just... This little handout here is essentially a snapshot of our violent intruder protocol, and it essentially doesn't only cover active shooter. It can be anybody that has the intent to commit violence on campus. We've very much so have committed to training our staff in response to a violent intruder or an active shooter. So we've had an active shooter response training now throughout the entire district at each school site, to give our teachers and staff specific strategies should they ever be faced with that critical incident. Thankfully, we've never had anything remotely close, but it is going to be an ongoing effort to maintain that training and also to build off of that training. So that's one of the things that I'm looking at doing, is not only just training our staff, but building off of it and making sure that it's something that that is understood and moved forward with. Yes?
Quick question. If the school does go on lockdown for any reason, are you looking at having any kind of notification system for the parents?
Our notification system would be very similar to how you're notified now. So it would be through district email, all-call email. But a lot of times we're going to make sure that that incident is contained and in a good spot before we notify, because we don't want parents coming to a critical incident either. Because a lot of times, as you see up there, we're going to have, up there, it's on my next slide. We're going to have a reunification center that's not going to be here at the school site. And so a lot of times people will naturally or intuitively come down to the school site to try to gather their student. Now that, in the case of a fire or a natural disaster, absolutely we would be reunifying your student with you here at the school site if possible.
Can something go out on the remind app? Because I know that.
Yes, yeah, well that would be a way, yes, that would be a way to notify. It wouldn't be the only way, so it would be multiple ways that we would
But
notify.
that's something you're looking at?
Is
The
it-
remind app? Because a lot of times people aren't around their email. And I know that last time, when the situation happened, they went out with remind app and it only went out to certain people.
Yeah, but everybody has to be signed up with the Remind app. But yes, it would be a way. We also have social media that we could proliferate as well. So there would be multiple ways that we would get that message out, absolutely. The other thing I'd like to highlight really quickly is our, we'll talk about bullying here in a moment, but our social media awareness and TextaTip. A lot of violence prevention, a lot of it starts or originates online. And it can happen between social media posts, it can happen between text message, group chats, what have you. And so we have a ton of parent ed nights on that as well. We're going to probably have another one in March. But a lot of the bad stuff can originate online. And so we just really highly encourage you, if your student does have a cell phone, if most likely they do, and that's not a bad thing, it's just how they use it, when they use it, who they're using it with, and just making sure that you're monitoring their use and making sure that it's appropriate. So TextaTip is a way that we want our students, and even you folks as well, it's not an emergency line, but it is a way to confidentially report anything that has to do with bullying, harassment, anything that has to do with suspicious activity, vandalism, threats to the campus safety, what have you. And then we take it from there. Really, that TextaTip comes into myself, and then I will reach out to the school site or to law enforcement, whatever the case may be, going forward. And I can't tell you how many times a TextaTip has come through, and we've actually followed through on that particular tip, and it's resulted in a positive result. And then, just positive messaging about posting and text messaging with cell phones. Not too many people are using Facebook anymore, not too many of our kids, and even Twitter's kind of subsiding, but Snapchat and Instagram are their probably two most highly utilized social media platforms. This video is actually a really good way to properly define and categorize bullying. A lot of times, unfortunately, in our position as administrators, any type of conflict gets labeled as bullying by parents, and sometimes it's misapplied. That term is misapplied. And it's understandable when people's children are involved and there's been some type of conflict and maybe even some harm inflicted. the emotions are high, and we want to make sure that we're intervening appropriately, and we're taking care of it, making sure that it doesn't happen again, administering appropriate consequences, having a plan of action, and monitoring the situation going forward, and taking all of those steps, correct? But we want to also make sure that our parents are educated to know that sometimes it's not bullying. It could be peer conflict. It could be just mean behavior. This video does a really good job of delineating the three and kind of showing you what our thought process is as we're trying to intervene and making sure we're making correct decisions as we intervene.
Bullying assessments and interventions. To appropriately assess incidents of bullying behavior, it must be confirmed that the incident is indeed bullying behavior and not conflict. There is a distinct difference between conflict and bullying behavior. Pure conflict, mean behavior, and bullying behavior. What's the difference? When a child is having a problem with his or her peers, it can be hard for parents to know what is really happening. Is it bullying behavior? Or is it something else? Each type of behavior must be handled differently to keep children safe and to help them learn how to get along with others. Conflict between and among peers is a natural part of growing up. Children will have times when they disagree and can't solve their own problems. They may even become so frustrated that they may say mean things or act out physically by hitting, kicking, or trying to hurt. If it's pure conflict, you will be aware that these children usually choose to play or hang out together. They have equal power, as in similar age, size, social status, etc. They are equally upset. They are both interested in the outcome, and they will be able to work things out with adult help after calming down. Mean behavior. Children may try out behaviors to assert themselves, sometimes saying or doing mean things, such as making fun of others, using a hurtful name, taking something without permission, leaving a child out, or budging in line. If it is mean behavior, usually the following applies. It is not planned, and it seems to happen spontaneously or by chance. It may be aimed at any child nearby. The child being mean may feel badly when an adult points out the harm they've caused. When adults see mean behavior, they should not ignore it. Adults should respond quickly, firmly, and respectfully to stop the behavior, to let kids know that their actions are harmful, and to redirect children to a more positive behavior. This quick response stops children from developing a pattern of mean behavior as a way of interacting with peers and prevents mean behavior from escalating into bullying behavior. It is a lot easier to correct a child for one nasty comment than to change a pattern of cruelty that grows over time. Bullying behavior. Bullying behavior is serious and has three key features. All three must be present for the situation to be considered bullying behavior. Power imbalance. One child clearly has power over the others, which may be due to age, size, social status, and so on. Intention to harm. The purpose of the bullying behavior is to harm or hurt others. It is intended to be mean, and it is clearly not accidental. Repeated over time. Bullying behavior continues over time and gets worse with repetition. There is a serious or implied threat that the behavior will not stop and in fact will become even more serious. The effect on the targeted child is increased fear, apprehension, and distress. Often by the time adults find out about what is happening, the child has tried many ways to stop the perpetrator but cannot do so on their own. Adults must address the bullying behavior and ensure the safety of the student who has been targeted. They also need to reassure the children who may have witnessed the behavior that the adults are taking care of it. When schools respond to bullying behavior, staff will also help the child who has been bullying others to take responsibility for their actions and to change their behavior. They will monitor the situation to ensure the bullying stops and will support the child who has been bullied to regain confidence and a sense of safety. Staff may follow up with the students who observe the behavior to help them learn what to do when they see bullying.
So some of what that didn't cover was not just physical bullying, but also some of the emotional bullying that can happen if it's isolation, cyberbullying that can happen, so there's nothing physical going on, but a lot of times an individual can be bullied via the internet, via group text or social media. So we take bullying extremely seriously. However, we do have to go through some steps to unravel situations, and a lot of times there is history and there is some back and forth at some point. However, if there is intentional body harm, if there is some type of targeting going on, and that other student is not involved in any way, shape, or form, they're just being targeted, we absolutely intervene and we absolutely take it very serious. And so the other piece of that is, if you notice, there's counseling on both ends, not only for the student that's been the target, but the student exhibiting the bullying behavior. And it's really important to change that behavior, not just institute a consequence or institute some sort of punitive action. So it's really important to us as well. And then, like I said, some of the effects of what was mentioned starts to get on the mental health side and the social-emotional supports that Heidi and Grace will talk about. I'm taking a little long, so I don't want to take up too much more time, but law enforcement partnerships are critical for us. I have close relationships with our captain over at Los Al PD, our commander over at Seal Beach PD, and our Orange County Sheriffs. I don't know if you know that, but our small little district has 3 law enforcement jurisdictions, so it does make it a little bit difficult to make sure we're staying cohesive with all 3 of those jurisdictions. Emergency preparedness is another thing we take very seriously. Our CPR, first aid, and AED training is free for all of our staff. It's not mandated, but it is free, and we offer that essentially 2 times per year, twice in the fall, twice in the spring. We have AEDs at each of our school sites. We have a uniform drill schedule at the elementary and at the secondary school sites. Emergency supplies have been updated, so food, bathrooming, water, any type of first aid medical supplies. Each of our schools have teams that respond, whether they be search and rescue, first aid, things of that nature. And then we do have reunification site plans that are off-site or on-site depending on the disaster. So right now we're also looking at our lockdown notification system. That's kind of in beta testing, and we're testing that at the district office. It would be a way to lock down the campus with a 1 or 2 touch button system off of the desk phone in the schools. So we're looking at that as well.
For the emergency supplies, does that include earthquake supplies for extended period of time?
Yes, up to 3 days.
Up to 3 days
Yes.
also?
Yes. Then the other thing that we're taking very, very seriously, because it gets to culture and climate, is our human relations efforts. And so we do quite a bit in terms of trying to create a culture of inclusion and making sure everybody feels welcome. But some of the things that we're really excited about is our 6th grade summit. At our 6th grade, we did what we call our CARES program: compassion, action, responsibility, empathy, and support. What we're trying to build is student awareness. Awareness of those around them, different cultures, different ways of looking at things, and respecting those boundaries and knowing that there's some social implications to certain behaviors, right? And so sometimes that's not necessarily understood at the 6th grade level quite yet, because they're still maturing, they're still coming into their own. So those are some things that we're looking at, not only instituting 6th grade, but 7th and 8th grade here in the spring. We're also looking at an upstanders workshop for our middle schoolers, because we know that any type of negative behavior, whether it be racial in nature, religious, or somebody's sexual orientation or gender identity, whatever that might be, if we can have somebody stand up for their peer in that moment, that behavior typically stops. Whether it's bullying, harassment, intimidation, if you have somebody come next to you and stand up and say, hey, listen, stop that, that typically stops. Obviously, we want to report it, and we want some adult intervention, and we don't want anybody to get into a physical altercation, but to stand up for somebody in that moment means the world to them, not only as somebody who is the target, but also stops that behavior, whoever's instituting that behavior in that moment. So we're looking at equipping our students with those tools coming up as well. And then, like I said, a lot of those other efforts, Come Walk in My Shoes, Grow Friends, those are all efforts that we've been working on here in the district for quite some time. And I think we have a video with the Starts With Hello program, and Heidi will get to that here in a moment. So really, on my to-do list, I kind of talked about it, but really, I still have a to-do list, and really my work is never done. And so I'm looking at constantly improving our safety and security at our school sites, training our teachers, making sure our students are prepared. And really it is an effort that even though there's one person that's the director of safety, it really is, it's everybody's job. It's everybody working together in this area. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dan Bennett, who is our education coordinator of educational technology. He's going to go over ways we keep kids safe online, internet, and digital. Here we go.
Thank you, Chris. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us tonight. And I'm going to talk about kind of the digital side of things. So a lot of what we've talked about so far has really focused on the physical environment and how we are observing and keeping everyone safe. A lot of what I deal with is a different type of environment entirely. It's the digital environment that our students are working in with their peers. Their teachers are providing materials. A lot of our learning is taking place online now. And I'm actually going to focus on 3 areas, but keep in mind, as Chris said earlier, I collaborate with essentially all of the leadership at the sites as well as at the district office. So I'm working with IT on a consistent basis, and they're also focused on things like confidentiality and any sort of like phishing and things like that. I'm going to focus on digital citizenship, cyberbullying, and mental health risks. So the first thing that I'm happy to talk about is Securely. Securely is a service that we rolled out this year. It's you can think of it as a web filter or something that's observing all of our internet traffic at the school sites. And it's looking to see where we're going, what we're looking at, what we're searching for, things like that. Securely essentially monitors the internet activity, and it's looking for, say, key terms that are tied to cyberbullying or other threats. Anytime that there's something that's either inappropriate or is a possible threat, then it sends out a warning to an administrator. An administrator is able to kind of look at that, determine what the level of immediacy is, and then they'll approach it either through a counselor or it might be directly by calling a student in and so forth. Additionally, it works on Chromebooks, any Chromebook, even at your house, if a student logs in with a Google LaSalle account. So part of Securely's model is actually to be a service to parents as well for free. So that if your student has a Chromebook and they log into that Chromebook with their Google LaSalle account, you can actually see essentially where they're going, what sites they're going to. You actually get, or should get at this point, an email from Securely. If you're not getting it, you can always reach out to me or to got a couple different district office emails that you can go to for our technology help desk, and they can just check and see why you're not getting the email. But at this point, majority of parents should get a weekly email that tells you essentially what your student is looking at while they're on our network at school, or if they're logged into a Chromebook with their Google LaSalle account. So it's really just a way of allowing you to monitor your students' internet activity as well. So it'll show things like if they've gone to Gigi, or if they're going to Reading Plus, or if they're doing some internet research. Occasionally it will show social media, but typically that's because they're grabbing an image for, say, like a project, and it was just posted through a Facebook post or something, but they're pulling it out of, say, like Google image search or something like that. So really helpful, really informative. There's a little button in the top right that allows you to actually log in, and you can actually log into Securely and get a little more interactive with this information. They even have an app that you can download on your phone. And the app will actually give you notifications if your student is doing something that gets flagged. So if they go to an inappropriate site, if they get flagged for a particular internet search or something like that, the same thing that an administrator would get, you would get as a notification. You also have the ability to customize the filtering while you're at home. So if your student's at home with their Chromebook, and let's say that at school, let's say that they're in elementary school and typically YouTube is blocked, but you want them to be able to go to YouTube to watch something in particular, you can actually, through your app, for your student, unlock YouTube or unlock some other sites that you want them to be able to go to at home under your supervision. So the app will actually allow you to customize it and really make Securely's monitoring service something that supports your family, as well as supporting our Griffins here and our students in our elementary and middle schools.
Dan,
So,
I'm
yes.
sorry, but that would only be if they went under the Go LaSalle account for our customization. Like if they are just on their
Correct.
Chromebook and obviously their
Correct.
Chromebook at home lets them just go on our open internet, then we're not going to really know that.
So if they're on a Chromebook and they're logged in with their Go LaSalle, it will monitor even on your internet. if they're on, say, like just a standard Gmail or something like that, then it's not going to be monitoring. So we actually have, we have a district website that's losal.org/BYOD, and on there we have some directions on how to set up the Chromebook so it restricts access, so that only certain accounts can log onto it. And so it takes you through steps in which you become the owner of the Chromebook, so you're kind of like the master account of that Chromebook, and then you can determine who's allowed to log into it. And it actually helps with theft as well, because you can prevent guest login, and you can prevent other accounts from logging in. So if someone were to take the Chromebook, they wouldn't be able to do anything with it, because you either have to have your Gmail or your student's Go LaSalle account to get on the device. So those directions, it's actually step-by-step directions that will take you through setting that up and securing the Chromebook. And then you can be sure that they're logging in with a Go LaSalle account.
Do teachers have access perhaps for their own class period? If the student, the science teacher assigns a project they want their students to work on, and you have a certain number of students who go off task, does it allow the teacher to sort of double check, going, hold it, why are you looking at that?
Well, typically in a classroom, a teacher is going to be monitoring. Typically the network's going to pick up. Securely is a pretty smart system in terms of learning what sites. In fact, it's learning from other school districts as well, because it's a service that we subscribe to, and they have AI and some other machine learning pieces that will essentially learn the bad sites. What teachers can do, and what typically happens, is they encounter a site that they want students to go to, but Securely is blocking them, in which case they can actually request IT to temporarily open it up. So for instance, there might be like a Huffington Post article or something that's really helpful for a social science class, and so they'll reach out and we can get it unlocked really quickly, and then the students can go to that site and have access for a certain period of time. So typically it's the opposite. It's more restrictive, and we need to open it up a little bit, and that's really just to keep it safe. It's also 24/7, so if a student in the middle of the night is searching for something and it really triggers some alarms and threats, then we get notifications immediately, and it goes to key personnel key staff that are, have been, can basically look at that information, really quickly make a judgment call on it, and be able to get the wheels moving if we feel like a student might be in danger. So this next service, I want to be really clear of, this is completely different. So far we've talked about Securely. Securely is monitoring internet activity, and parents get reports, you can log into it, you can receive those notifications. This other service that I'm going to go over briefly is called SIS Cloud. It is also new this year, but it's a little more behind the scenes. And what it really is doing is it's looking through Google accounts, emails, and Office 365, and just monitoring, again, for any kind of threat. So we're looking for bullying, we're looking for any threats of harm, we're looking for self-harm, things like that. And then these notifications are only going out to those key individuals, those key administrators, like for instance Dr. Olshan, who can really make a judgment call if what they're seeing is just kind of a natural kind of student working on an assignment or something like that, or if it's really detected something that really shows that there's danger and we need to intervene. So this is not something where you're going to get a parent notification. This is something where we're going to be sensitive to the information, especially because this is Google Docs and email and things like that, where it really is private documents of a student, and we don't want to just be blasting it out. We want to really be careful about this, but also make sure that we are being observant and being vigilant in this digital environment. So SIS Cloud is there, it's keeping our students safe, and it's really something that we make a high priority.
So I'm sorry, please read
Yeah.
my ignorance.
Oh, yeah.
It's in elementary school and
Absolutely.
here in high school, so they don't have a Chromebook. But I assume that, I use Office 365 in my job, and I have my own email account, and my boss monitors the email and all that kind of stuff in similar types of fashions. Are you saying that once a kid comes here to LaSalle High School, they're going to give this SIS Cloud thing their personal email address, and this is going to sift through all their emails?
No, this is so every student in the district, whether they're using it yet or not, has a Google account and an Office 365 account that's provided by the district, and it's free. So it's usually followed by the end of the email is @golosal.net. That's how we identify student emails. So for instance, it might be like jsmith@golosal.net. And so when they're logged into that LaSalle provided account, that's where SIS Cloud is looking. So if they're getting an assignment, say their 5th grade teacher has assigned like a history report or something like that, and they're writing an essay, SIS Cloud has essentially looked at that essay and other documents that are in their Google Drive just to look for threats and harm and things like that.
As long as they're logged into that particular Google account. If they have other Google or Office 365 accounts, it doesn't monitor that.
Exactly.
Have you thought about looking at it at the firewall level?
So we have firewalls that are looking at certain things, but nothing is as sophisticated as this in terms of this really is smarter than your typical firewall that's just going to ping off of words, you know, like specific harm words or bullying words or things like that. This is really looking for phrases. And when we get the notifications in our email, so there's just a few of us in the room that get those emails, and essentially it gives us a little clip, a little snippet that it has identified. So it's not specific words like bomb or something like that. It's a literal phrase, so we can get an idea of the actual context and not just get false positives all the time from all these different words that might be in poems or stories or things like that. So, and really, I don't think it'll ever extend beyond, it's not going to extend beyond GoLoSal or GoLoSal.org. It would never extend to the personal side, because again, that's kind of where that privacy boundary is. All right. All right, and I can also answer more questions about that at the end, but we really just wanted to provide an insight in terms of how we're supervising that digital environment for our students to keep them safe. And this leads perfectly into Dr. Olson.
Perfectly. So we've been talking an awful lot, and now we move to, you know, the topic that makes everybody get a little uncomfortable. So we saved it for the end so that we can really explore. It is our mission to make sure that all of our students feel comfortable, are safe, and are thriving in our school district. And a big piece of that has to do with their social, emotional well-being and their mental health. So what we're going to talk a little bit about in just this segment is some of the challenges that we're facing in schools today regarding mental health. We're going to talk a little bit about what those risk factors are. And I know when we get into it, it's kind of like when you were in college and you took your first psych class and you opened up your textbook and every single disorder that was in there you had, right? Or if you were looking at, you know, WebMD, you're over the edge like, oh, I must have all of these awful things. It's just a guideline. It's just really something to be aware of so that we look at it and just don't dismiss everything, especially if there are multiple risk factors that are present with our kids. We're going to talk a little bit about suicide identification, what we're going to do in terms of prevention and what we do after we have a notification that a child might be thinking about committing suicide or might have tried to commit suicide, and now they're with us and what we can do to help the student, and then additional strategies for supporting our students. So, you know, to me, the most important statistic that's up there is 1 in 5. When you think about that, 1 in 5, that's a lot of kids. And what that means is that we have students sitting in our classrooms, sitting at every single one of our schools. And I know the second bullet there talks about ages 13 to 18, but we have experienced students that are dealing with stress and anxiety and depression, ADHD, other mental disorders as early as kindergarten and pre-kindergarten, okay? Typically, it manifests differently with the age of the student, but we notice all of these things. And I think that it's important when you look at that short list of what are these mental health issues, what is considered mental illness, and it's not just schizophrenia, you know, it's not just something that is a person dealing with a psychotic episode. Yes, that's a mental illness, but also someone who has pervasive anxiety, it's a mental illness. It's something that we need to address, and that we need to be comfortable addressing and destigmatizing the fact that we have a mental illness. It doesn't mean it's the end of the world. There are lots of folks out there that deal with mental illness, and it's under control, and they thrive, and they do well in spite of it. And so I just want to put that out there. I think sometimes when the numbers get inflated, maybe it's because it isn't as stigmatized as it was before. People are talking about it more and more. They're admitting that they're dealing with these uncomfortable situations. And so we now have this rise in these numbers of these issues. Some of the risk factors, or some of those identifying factors that we look at, are listed there. And again, we all worry. We're all anxious. We all have periods where we're sad. Every single one of us, including our children. It's when it's pervasive. It's when it interferes with their life and they cannot seem to move forward because it gets in the way. The delusions, hallucinations, that's psychotic. That's at a different end of the spectrum. Substance abuse and use is really important because it's a red flag. It is sometimes kids will say, well, it's a rite of passage. It's what everybody does. You probably did it too. But again, when it's pervasive, when it interferes in the normal daily activities of your child's life, it's problematic and it needs to be addressed. Sometimes kids go down a path of substance use because they're self-medicating, and it makes them feel better. When they're anxious, if they take substance, whether it's marijuana, whether it's taking pills that they've managed to buy or get from a medicine cabinet, they relax and it makes them feel better, and they don't realize that they're self-medicating. And it's important to make sure that medication is prescribed by a physician and that it's used appropriately. I'm going to let Grace come up and talk about what the district does in terms of our suicide prevention. And we've got a short video that will come up from there as well. And then we'll field questions.
So just this last school year, it's not this school year, the year before, we, by the state, were mandated to implement a suicide prevention policy. And so part of that policy is that we yearly train all of our staff on the signs to look for. So we have a whole presentation that Dr. Olshan, myself, and Chris do to really make sure that our teachers, because they're the ones that have the most interaction with our students on a daily basis, are looking for those specific signs and how to intervene and who to get help from, and kind of similar to what we'll talk about later, just our process for how we support students. And so that's new the last couple of years. And so it's really looking at those, the needs of those specific high risk groups. And then there's three components to the suicide prevention policy. So there's prevention, which is obviously the most important, is we want to be able to intervene before something happens. And then there's intervention, which hopefully if it comes to our attention, we're able to intervene and support students before something tragic happens. And then the postvention is perhaps maybe for some of our students who may have struggled with some type of situation, whether they were hospitalized or maybe they were feeling they were cutting or something, and so it's a way that we essentially address that afterwards. So this is just a video that we had found that we felt was really powerful for you as parents, that really kind of shows you, and a lot of you I'm sure know this, but just how to ask those specific questions, and it's actually kids talking about their own struggles and how, kind of some of those phrases and what you can respond with. So I'm going to go ahead and play that.
I have my ups and downs, just like anybody else.
Maybe more than anybody else.
I can be hard to figure out.
And I like my privacy. I don't want you looking over my shoulder all the time.
But you know your kid better than anybody else. And if you think he's acting different than usual...
Acting really down, crying all the time for no good reason.
Or getting really mad, not able to sleep, or sleeping too much.
Shutting her friends out or giving her stuff away.
Acting reckless, drinking, using drugs, staying out late.
Suddenly not doing stuff he used to love.
Or doing stuff that's just not like him.
It might be nothing to worry about. It might just be high school.
Or it might be something more. He might be depressed.
Not just feeling down, really depressed.
It might be that your kid is thinking about killing himself. It happens. More than you think. More than it should.
And people say, I had no idea.
I thought it was just a phase he was going through.
I never thought she'd do it.
I wish he'd come to me.
I wish he'd said something.
I wish I'd said something.
When it's too late. So if you think your kid's acting different, If she seems like a different person, say something.
Say, what's wrong? How can I help?
And ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself? It doesn't hurt to ask. In fact, it helps.
When people are thinking about killing themselves, they want somebody to ask. They want somebody to care.
Maybe you're afraid you'll make it worse if you ask. Like, you'll put the idea in their head.
Believe me, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't hurt to ask.
In fact, the best way to keep a teenager from killing herself is to ask, are you thinking about killing yourself?
And what if they say yes?
Or maybe.
Or sometimes.
Well, here's what you don't say.
That's crazy.
Don't be such a drama queen.
You're making too much of this.
That boy's not worth killing yourself over.
That's not going to solve anything.
You're just trying to get attention.
You're not going to kill yourself. What you do say is,
I'm sorry you're feeling so bad. How can I help?
We'll get through this together.
Let's keep you safe.
a lot of people think about killing themselves, adults and kids. Most of them never try it, but some of them do. So if your kid says,
I'd be better off dead.
I can't live with this.
I'm gonna kill myself.
Take her seriously. Find someone she can talk to about it. Someone who knows how to help.
Sometimes kids want to kill themselves because something happened. A breakup, a failure. But sometimes it goes deeper, and it's not going to go away by itself.
Get some help. Talk to your doctor.
Or a counselor at school.
Or your minister.
But don't just let it drop.
And make sure that your kid always has someone to turn to. Someone he trusts.
Make a list together, right then. 3, 4, 5 names.
Put a suicide hotline number on there too.
Have him keep that list in his wallet, so he always knows where to turn.
Make sure your home is safe.
If you have pills she could use to hurt herself, lock them up.
If you have a gun, don't just lock it up. Get it out of the house. The bullets, too.
And one more thing. If you think your kid might be about to hurt himself, don't leave him alone.
Take him to the emergency room.
Call 911 if you have to.
We all have our ups and downs, but sometimes it's more than that.
If you think something's wrong, the only way to find out is to ask.
Ask straight out. Are you thinking about killing yourself?
Don't wait until you're sure. Trust your gut.
Because it never hurts to ask.
And it can make a big difference. All the difference.
In your kid's life.
Video, right? But I think it's really impactful for all of us, and I think as parents, and you guys do know your kids better than anyone, and I know a lot of us that worked in the counseling capacity, we developed relationships with students, and we appreciate so much. I know when I was a school psychologist and I would get phone calls from parents, something just didn't seem right today, or can you check in with my child? All of that information, and it's hard sometimes to reach out, but try and develop that relationship or put trust in us to know that we care about your children just as much, and we're here to help them and support them. And so, I just love, I know they repeated it several times, but don't be afraid to ask your child. If they're saying some of those, concerning things like, I wish I were dead, or doing things that don't seem like the norm for your child, ask them, are you thinking about killing yourself? Or, what are your thoughts? What are you feeling right now? So that was just something we wanted to share with you and empower you to have those conversations. And we're definitely here as a school to help navigate those conversations if you maybe don't feel comfortable with that. So moving on to prevention, so we've really increased our efforts with teaching problem solving and coping skills. That's really a goal of ours, is social-emotional learning is kind of the buzzword, to really make sure we have several mental health counselors, we have counseling services available at all of our school sites. We have different types of curriculum that we do in the classrooms. We're trying to find ways to build that prevention side, so when students are faced with something that's maybe causing them some adversity or situation, they have some skills to lean on. So if you're already in that down place, it's hard sometimes to access or learn new skills, so we want to teach them prior to that so then they can access those coping skills when they're in that type of a situation. Promoting a positive school climate, I know Chris touched on this earlier, we're really wanting the students to, it's not seen as stigmatized. If you're struggling with something that's happening in your life, we want them to know where those resources are, so once again they can access them. We want to do more parent guardian outreach and education like we're doing tonight. We do a lot of, it's called multi-systems, tiered systems of support, where we hold meetings for students that, like a teacher might bring a concern up, or someone on the campus, we hold a meeting, we figure out how to address it, develop goals, provide support for that student. And then really our ultimate goal is to really create that open door climate. We want students at any time, and you as parents, to feel like you guys can come and speak to us, where students feel comfortable and they know someone. So there's like research about that. Just one adult can have that impact for a child. And a lot of the time, so a lot of our training with teachers is that a lot of times it's the teachers. They spend 6 hours a day if they're in elementary school with your children every single day. Maybe it's, you know, a secondary class. Regardless, they have that relationship. They will more than likely share something with them. And then we can have teachers direct that to the people that are able to support them. So this is a cute little video, start with hello, that actually one of our counselors here, Mrs. Heron, helped kind of lead, you know, these efforts this year. And it's just greeting students and really just promoting kindness and connectedness on a campus.
I like that.
Yay!
On this side.
There she is, right at bed. So I love that video, and I know a lot of our other schools are doing similar things, and I know she was just sharing with me right now that they just started like a random active kindness club, and so any of those types of things that promote that connectedness and just being kind to one another and is just fantastic, and we love that. So the intervention and postvention, so this kind of gets more into protocols and our threat assessment protocol, which I'll go over on the next slide briefly. And that we do have school-based counseling, and that we always do re-entry meetings for our students if we're aware. If they're out for some extended period of time or even a couple days for hospitalization or something has occurred, we want to make sure that we can support that student, and with your support and, you know, willingness for us to be involved, and make sure that they have the right support when they come back to school, because that can be really, really difficult when you're at a school for some type of mental health concern, and then you come back and then you're, you know, integrated back into your classes and no one really knows what's going on. It's very helpful for us to know that so we can support our students. So this is just a chart that kind of illustrates this. It's all very brief, but if we have a concern for a student, whether a teacher brings it to our attention, a parent, we connect with a crisis team member. So that could be one of our mental health counselors, our school psychologist, one of our school counselors. Typically an administrator would be part of that team. We would be doing some type of suicide assessment to determine the level of risk. Whether or not that's a low risk or a high risk. If it's a high risk, we may be calling like the CAT team, you know, to come and do an assessment from the county. We would obviously involve parents in that discussion. We would offer support for the student ongoing. So knowing if it's a high or even a low or medium risk, we may need to provide ongoing counseling support here at school. We may refer you to some outside agencies, which we're going to talk about. We have someone here. We would obviously do a reentry meeting and provide that support. So we definitely have, I believe that our district doesn't do it, and we do it better than anyone. We are so on top of it. Our teachers are so trained. They will let us know instantly. Like, they don't wait until the next day to say, oh, students told me this, or there's something in a paper. I mean, it's instantaneous. Everyone rallies together, and everyone really makes sure that we're informing everyone to the best of our abilities as quickly as we can to make sure that that student is safe. We don't leave them alone, and we really make sure that we're addressing those risks. So final thoughts. So I think our ultimate goal is that, I think as parents and also as a school district, we want to build resiliency in all of our students and make sure that when they are, if they are faced with something, as Dr. Olshan mentioned, 1 in 5 students will face something in their lifetime, and so it's important that they have some skills to be able to handle that and be resilient to how to move forward. Ensuring that we're teaching problem solving, giving them the access to supports when necessary or mental health care, providing you guys with those connections and also supports, really reducing stigma about mental health and promoting suicide prevention school-wide. So that's really, I know we're always having conversations. I've spoken with our counselors, our school psychologists, you know, they do like a school counseling week every year. We try and find ways to make sure that we're continuously bringing up that, you know, there's supports available and to reduce that stigma. So I believe I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Olshan, and she's going to introduce our last person that's going to share.
So I think Chris printed this out, so you should all have this in your handout. I think it's important that you have these resources. But starting last year, with that very last resource that you see, Care Solace, is an online service that we have partnered with Chad Castorita, and this is Daniel Schwartz, he's our care brother, who will walk you through a very simple and quick way to deal with the intensity of mental health industry. It's really hard with insurance, who's nearby, where you can get an appointment. It's hard to do it on your own. It's difficult enough when you're upset and you have to find some kind of support. So this service, and Daniel will walk you through it, really has helped a lot of our families already, and it's starting to take its own, it's growing exponentially, which is really nice. It makes me feel good. And with everything that we've said, just know that some of this is geared a little bit towards the older kids, but I know some of you may have, elementary school kids. It manifests differently. So if you're noticing behaviorally, things are just off, or your child is more aggressive towards other kids, those are signs. Kids aren't just like that ordinarily. There's usually a reason, and it's up to us, all of us, to figure out what is the reason, what's the trigger, what is it that's happening, so that we can address the issue and take care of it so that our kids are doing well at school. So without further ado, Daniel, it's all yours. There you go.
All right, thanks for having me tonight. So I'd like to talk to you about Care Solace. I think it should be up. Great. So like Dr. Olshan was saying, we know that it's really hard for parents, and so solace is comfort in a time of distress. And we've really become that comfort for, I think we've helped 37,000 families now get access into care through using our system. And we have a social mission here that's really 3 parts. The first part is to break down barriers for parents. So like Heidi was saying, it's really hard to find access into care when families are upset, they don't know where to look. The second part of our mission is ethics. So making sure that every family, when they're looking for care, that the resources that they find are safe and ethical, and that they can trust and rest assured knowing that they found something they can trust. The third part of our mission is capacity. A lot of resources fill up quickly. So we have now a community of care with 4,700 providers in it. And so we found a solution to break down barriers for parents, provide ethical care, and provide a capacity for families so that they can always have resources to go to in a time of need. So the way this works, it's a simple web link. So what you'd enter in here would be caresolace.com/Los Al Families, and then that will take you to our platform. I believe Dr. Olshan handed out a piece of paper that has that information on it. It should have our web link as well as some of the issues that we deal with. When you go to the platform, the first thing you'll see is up here, there's a Talk to Us button. Oh, there you go. So this is 24/7. So you can email us around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we'll respond to you. We also have a 24/7 phone number, which you can call, and it will route to one of our care brothers, which I'm the manager of. I'll explain what a care brother or care sister is in a little bit. We also speak Spanish, if that's a necessity. Okay. Did I hit it? Okay, thank you. New computer. Here we have the crisis hotlines. Sorry, so it's just a single tab.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little bit more to the left of the chat.
To the left of the
Yeah,
page?
because it's right.
Yeah. Oh, it's
You got
okay.
it.
Okay, thanks. Now the back button again, I guess. Sorry, thanks. I think that's all right. So this is a simple screening. So as long as you have an idea of whatever you're struggling with, you can select from these drop-down menus. So under substance abuse, we have alcohol, cannabis, hallucinogens, inhalants, and that includes vaping, which as mentioned earlier has become a huge problem. Opioids, stimulants, and sedatives. Under mental health, There's bipolar, depression, anxiety, suicide, obsessive compulsive, trauma and stress, feeding and eating, disruptive, autism, and ADHD. And the way this works is you can select whatever issue you think your child or yourself, this is for anyone in the school district, this could be for yourself or a family member, anyone that could be struggling. So as long as you have an idea of what they're struggling with, you can select in this menu, and it'll guide your search to make sure that you end up with resources that are specifically tailored to the issue you're dealing with, the age and gender of the person in need. I'll just start with anxiety and depression. What is the severity? So this is further going to guide the pathway of care that you're directed to. So in our community of care, those 4,700 providers, we have psychologists, we have therapists, psychiatrists, outpatient programs, which is like 2 to 3 times a week therapy, intensive outpatient, which is 5 times a week. We also have hospitalization for more extreme cases and residential inpatient services, as well as hospital detox. Do medium search. Has the person seen a therapist before? If the person has seen a therapist before, then it might be necessary for them to transition into a more intensive pathway of care, which would be something like outpatient. So we provide that option. They can select between the two. Let's stick with therapy just for the example. Is the person willing to get help? So here at Care Solace, we've helped facilitate 2,600 crisis interventions. So if a person is not willing to get help, if there's school refusal, we can help change someone from a no to care to a yes. We have a team of crisis interventionists that we work closely with, and we can help facilitate that. Gender identity, male, female, or transgender. Age, children, adolescents, and adults. Most of our use comes from adolescents, but we do see a lot of children in the elementary schools that also need help to resources. Insurance, so this is also really important. So the 2 main reasons that people don't get access to care is they don't know where to look, and they also don't know what's going to be accepted by their insurance. So as we've hand selected all of those 4,700 facilities and resources that are in our community of care, we've integrated with their insurance. So we know what they accept, and so when you select, you can click here, K for Kaiser, A for Anthem Blue Cross. We get a lot of Medi-Cal families. When you select with your insurance, you're going to be paired with resources that accept that insurance. So there won't be any doubt about what's going to be accepted or anything like that. The zip code, it's 90720. So you can select for a 5, 15, or 25-mile radius. This will pull up facilities that are within that zip code, within that radius of distance. We ask for an email. This is so we can send you a We Serve email. It's just an introduction email to let you know that we're here to help. If you'd like further assistance, you can call us or send us an email, and you'll have a person who will be in person able to talk to you on the phone and help you navigate finding a resource, helping with your insurance, and scheduling an appointment. So these are the resources that came up within a 5-mile radius. These all work with Medi-Cal insurance. So you can see here that they have a care score. So that's our proprietary scoring model. So the vetting process to end up in our community of care, they have to be 5 years in service. They have to have never had a lawsuit or probation period ever. We check for an accreditation with either JACO or CARF. We make sure that they've never had any rip-off reports, and that's a severe customer complaint. You have to really do malpractice to end up there. And we make sure that they're licensed practitioners. We don't want families to end up with interns. So based on that, they are given a care score. Anyone lower than a 75, they won't be in our system. Also, what you can see here is the mile radius. So based on the issue selected, the age and gender, these resources were pulled up, as well as the mile radius to the zip code. Another really important thing is the wait time and availability. So we don't want parents, what we've seen happen in the past is that there's an issue referring care and then parents actually taking advantage of that resource and having to wait. So they do a phone assessment and then they have to drive and do an assessment in person, and then they find out that there's a 3-week wait time for any appointment. So what we do is we check the facilities in our community monthly to try and make sure that our wait time and availability is up to date so that parents don't have to wait around to receive care. Also here, a parent can click to select any special requests. So based on their the search that I did, it pulled up mostly individual therapy and day treatment. But if a family wants to include outpatient, intensive outpatient, or psychiatrist in the search, all they have to do is click these things, click Get Matched, and it'll regenerate results that now will include those criteria that they just selected. Also, they can change their insurance. You can click Share Search Results. So if you're doing this for a family member and you want to send them the results, all you have to do is click here and you'll be able to send them that link. And when they click the link, they'll be taken directly to these results. The other thing that I want to speak on is our Care Brothers and Care Sisters program, which has just been an absolute game changer for helping families. What that is it's really become a concierge service for any family that wants to receive mental health or substance abuse care. So when you call a Care Brother, if you call us at our 888 number, we'll pair you with someone like myself, who will help you find resources and schedule an appointment. We get a lot of referrals from counselors and psychologists at school districts, and we update the staff, letting them know what we're doing with that family and where we're at with the process. And so that they're sure to know that there's been a resource found and that that family is starting to receive care. We know that receiving care is important, and we also know that it's a huge challenge. So we're trying to fill the gap of parents just being lost and having to turn to resources like Google and having to become, researchers in this field of what accepts their insurance, who has availability, where do they go, where do they look. We're here to help with all that. So you can call us and we'll talk to you in person, and you'll have a person that will talk to you daily and help you find resources that work with your insurance and deal with the specific issue that you or your family member are struggling with. Are there any questions? Yes?
What is your phone number?
Our phone number is 888-515-0595. You're welcome. Yes?
The other thing that you just spoke about, how much does that cost? Was that one of
I'm sorry, how much does what cost?
You were saying that their brothers or sisters?
It doesn't cost anything. It's free to the school district. It's free to everyone. So yeah, we have no economic partnership with any of the resources in our database at all. We're partnered with the school district. So that's how we make money, and so that's how we're able to be a free service to everyone in the school district. We have a yearly subscription in place, and so any family member that wants to use us, they can use us as much as they want, and they can have a Care Brother and Care Sister help them through the whole process at no cost.
Yes, I think that's really important that you understand that the district has partnered with Care Solace as a resource to families, so there is no out-of-pocket for you to use this particular service. Does that make sense?